Hi, everyone. It's in my clock here, 5 p.m. in Constance, Germany. So I want to welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today to the webinar called Flatten the Learning Curve, Getting Started with Knime in HR. A very interesting topic, which I'm not going to present. I am Skalk Gerber. I'm from the Knime education team. And today's presenter will be Julian Llewellyn, who just also turned on his camera and who I will ask to introduce himself in a moment. But before we get to that, just a couple of housekeeping arrangements before we get started. First of all, we do encourage questions. So please, if you do have a question, go to the Q&A and just write it out there. And we'll try and answer as many of these questions live with Julian. And if not, we will go and post them afterwards in the forum. The session is also recorded and will be shared on YouTube afterwards. So in case you want to go back and look at something or you missed something, don't worry, we have you covered. Julian has also agreed that he will share some slides and workflows with us, and we will post them either in a dedicated Knime forum where you can also get in contact with Julian afterwards, or on the Knime Hub. Okay, so I think that's it from my side. I'm very excited to have Julian here today, and I want to now give him the stage and welcome.
All right, thank you, Shark. I will present my screen. I hope that works. So give me a short moment. Yeah, let's go. Here we are. Yeah, a few words to me. I'm Julian Llewellyn. I am a psychologist and I work for the HR department in Mercedes-Benz. And I use Knime since 2006. I think that's enough to say for me. I do many interesting things with Knime, and I learned many things. And this is why I'm here today, because I want to share my knowledge. And I got three main topics. Topic number one is I want to explain why I started using Knime. Then I do the hands-on part. I will present of course, this is opinionated, but in my opinion, the top 10 Knime notes for beginning with it. And in the end, I will share a few best practices. Yeah, why did I start using Knime? In my department, the most often used tool is Excel, and of course also PowerPoint, but mostly Excel. So we use spreadsheets. And when you work with spreadsheets, you face many problems. And of course, you have gigantic degrees of freedoms, but this freedom can also lead to errors. And on the one hand, you can work with complex formulas, then they are really difficult to understand. You have mixed, on the one hand, destructive operations. So for example, you erase a column or erase a row, then it's gone. And you can also do calculations, and you do the same, do it at the same time. Some people work with macros. They can really fulfill great things, but they are also dangerous because one person writes them, and maybe this person changes the job. Then you can't operate it any longer. You can't really automate anything. You store data longer than necessary. And sometimes you transmit data via email, and this is also not good. So in overall, you are facing high costs, frustrated users, and you can get a data protection problem. In my job, I was able to try out and use Knime. And I put in this slide here, job crafting is a psychological construct. It's about proactive strategies to change the characteristics of one's job, of my job. And what Knime did to me was I was able to better understand the data. I was developing programming skills. I was able to do less repetitive tasks and work. My work had a higher impact and the work outcomes became better. And so Knime really changed my job. And this is what I did over the last years in my department in various use cases. And now I want to switch over to the top 10 Knime nodes, in my opinion. So let's go with that. We are here inside Knime. On my screen, you can see on the right hand today's nodes. And I will start with the first node, which is the Excel reader. I will present 2 data sets to you. And also I got 1 data set of course, artificial data, which are job postings. And my idea today is that I show you different operations on those 2 data sets. And I will also join the job postings with those data. Now let's dive in. I got the Excel spreadsheet right here. I called it persons 1. And we can see we got a column header and we got an ID column and information about persons. And I will now import this sheet into Knime. I prepared it here for my safety, but of course I will do it live. So here I got the folder with the file containing, and all I have to do is drag and drop this file inside. So I click it and dragging works. Nice. And what Knime does for me is it has the file path here. It lies on my desktop in my Knime folder. And I also get a preview and it looks pretty good. So what I see here is exactly what I have seen on the spreadsheet. And all I have to do is hit OK. And now I will hit right click and execute. Please note one thing. You can see the number 3 here under my mouse cursor, and this is a hotkey. I am used to using hotkeys. So for example, if I want to reset a node, I use my keyboard and hit the 4. And if I want to run it, I hit the number 3. It looks like this. Now it's executed. Now it's resetted. Now it's executed. This is really fast. This is also one of my best practices, which I want to share with you. Use hotkeys. And I normally use the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the 3 is the execution. Okay. Now I got this file. When I hit right click and click on file table, then I see the information here. And this is the first thing I wanted to show you. This is how you can read in Excel files. Okay, now I will add another file, which is basically the same. Before I do that, I make an annotation. Okay, persons 1. I erase that one. And now I add the second file. And with the second file, there is one specialty. Let's see into that. I take the file. And what we see here is it looks not so good like the first file. We can see here, oh, Knime reads the first sheet by default. So there seems to be some kind of distracting other sheet inside my file. And this is, of course, on purpose. I just want to show you that you can select which sheet you want to read. So I want the data sheet, of course. Now I'm a little step further, but here it still is not looking as I want it. And let's check out the file content. If I click on the file content, I see how the file really looks in Microsoft Excel. And I can see here is some kind of header. And the real content which interests me starts in column C, row number 5. And this is my column header. So what I can do now with this information is I can say the table contains column names in row number 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I changed it here. And the other thing I can do is I can say read only data from C and row. Here I put a stick. So I want to start with the content. When I switch back to the preview, then I can see, okay, now the first ID, which is in this case number 13, has been read into. And I can hit OK, run it, and check it out in the file table. And now it's looking good. Okay. So let's keep that. I copy the description. It's really important to describe what you are doing, because doing so, you get a full process documentation while you do your data work. Okay, now we are done with the reading in of Excel files. Of course, there is much to be said about this, but I think I covered the most important things. And yeah, Knime has also a great documentation. For example, when I click a node and then hit description, then I can read all the info which is needed. Every setting is described. What I want to do now as next step, I want to combine two tables. I want to concatenate them. And for this, I have the concatenate node. In my presentation, I prepared everything, but I also want to show you the search feature of Knime. And when you want to deal with Excel files, for example, you can type in EXCEL in the search, and then you can see everything which is relevant. And the learning curve part is you have to know how the nodes are called. And I think this is a good preparation for you, because when you know that you want to concatenate some data, then you just type in conc or something like this, and then you're at your goal. Also good to have that in mind. Now, what does the concatenate node do? It combines tables with a similar structure. So I can link now my table 1 and my table 2, and then I can execute it. I don't really need to configure anything. I will show you the configuration soon, but first I want to show you the result out of the box, and this is my concatenated table. We see we have that ID column. We have all the other information. We will deal with this isTest column later, but right now it looks pretty good. What we can see here, this is also, of course, on purpose. We have the same person twice in the data set, once from table 2 and the second is from table 1. So we have to deal also with that case. Yeah, this is about concatenating the data. Now I go into the settings of this node, and you have some settings which you can do. Normally, I really keep it like it is in the preset. You can decide how you want to handle columns. So normally I say use union of columns. This means that when the table schemas differ a little bit, then all columns are presented. If the intersection setting is took and you have differing table schemas, then you will only have the intersection of those, like the name says. And you can also decide what you want to do with duplicate row IDs. This is sometimes maybe interesting. For me, it's just append a suffix and then everything is good. And the suffix, you might see it here. Yeah, this is then the case from these rows here. All right, so much about concatenating the data. Now I copy the row splitter. And what I want to do now is look into the data and find out what I want to split. So let's look it up. I generated this isTest column, and now I will sort it in descending order. This is a so-called a flagging column. If I do this and to describe certain cases, and in my data, these 3 cases are test persons, and I want to get them out. So this is Dirk Tester, for example, and I want to use this criteria here to filter those 3 cases out. And doing so, I can use the row splitter. This is really easy to configure. The row splitter has one option where it says include something or exclude something. I want to exclude something, so I choose this option here. And another thing is you can say you want to exclude by attribute value or by number or by row ID. I normally not use row ID exclusion at all. Sometimes I use a number exclusion. This means you can say you only want the first 10 entries of a table. for something like this, it is really handy for developing a workflow. But normally what you want to do is include or exclude data by some column. And for example, I can say now is test, I want to do some range checking, and I want to say what should be excluded, the 1. So my lower bound, every number which is higher than 1 or equals 1 will be excluded. Let's do it. I run it, and now I have 2 outputs. I will hover over those outputs. The first one has 30 rows. The second one has 3 rows. And when we check this out here, we have 33 rows. So the row splitter, what he does is it splits it up, and my filtered output is in the lower table. And this is the great advantage compared to a row filter. This one here presents me what I filtered out. So just for you to know, the row filter works exactly the same. Let's put it in. Do exactly the same here. So also here is test, range checking, lower bound is a 1. Okay, let's go for that. And now what do we see? Okay, we have those, but we want to keep the other data. So I say exclude that, and I have no transparency anymore about the filtered out. I only know there is 30 rows, but I don't know, for example, how much I've I filtered out. So normally I don't use the filter nodes of Knime. I always use splitter nodes. This is also some kind of best practice which I want to share with you. Now I showed you what to do with number columns. What we can also do is to take some other criteria. I just will duplicate this right quick for you to see that. I hook on the row splitter, and now I want to, for example, take the gender, and I want to split male and female. And of course, yeah, it's complaining that I can't do range checking with a string data type. So of course, I have to use the pattern matching. And the good thing on the pattern matching is that when there are not so many entries, when there's not so much variation in your table, then you can just select it here. And I now say I want to take the males and exclude them. So put them on the bottom on the second output and hit OK, run it, and go to the filtered out. And here we see the gender is only male. And in the first output, it is only female. Yeah. So next one. Let's go to the column filter. And this is really, really an easy one. Copy it again, paste it. And the reason what you want to do with it is you remove unwanted columns. So after we used the isTest column, we can then filter it because we don't need it anymore. And now I can say, I take this column and put it to the left. The left part here is what shall be excluded, and the right part here is what shall be included. I hit OK, run it, and go to the filtered table. And here we are. The column is missing then. And of course, also here is a column splitter. Here we go. That's the same thing, but I think the column filter is more convenient. And normally, if here it looks like the top is the left part, which is to me a bit counterintuitive. And this would also be an option to use the column splitter and then say I want the isTest to bottom. Also here, now I can see this was filtered out. So Knime gives you lots of variation of nodes which you can use, which I really like also. Okay, save the workflow. And the next node I want to present to you is the column rename. I join them. And what the column rename does, it renames columns, of course. Let's find a column which we want to rename. And for example, I don't want this to be named origin. I want to rename this as source. Okay, so I just hit double click the origin and change it to source. Also, you can change the file format. In this case, it makes no sense because nominal values is something you don't want to work with. String is okay. Let's see what happens with ID. I think this is better. You can, for example, convert an integer variable to a string or to some other kind of number, but normally you don't do it. I just show it because it's possible. The basic what you can do with this node is you have one column, you double click it, and then you can say you want to change it and put in the different name. So for example, when we are in Germany, then I can make city to Stadt, and that's it. And yeah, when I hit remove, then it goes away. Okay, so let's see the output. By the way, this is one of the coolest Knime features, which I like the most. In every step where you work, you get the result of your action. So when we are here, I can see the status of the data on this point. And when I'm a little bit farther, then I can see, okay, this is my status now. And I can compare it, place it next to each other. I can see here, okay, I had 33 rows, now it's 30. I had 9 columns, now it's 8. I can go into the table specification and check out the column names, put them next to each other. And this is also really, really handy to work with it. And like I told, using Excel, you can destruct something in your tables. Using Knime, you just have some kind of workflow, steps lined together, which then you can just rewind like it is an old tape playback machine. Okay, so now let's look at the data. We have now the source column. And now begins the fun. I'm looking at the watch, 17:22. We got some like 40 minutes, but I also want to answer some questions. But I can promise you the complexity will now rise a little bit. So the first 5 nodes were easy ones, and I did this on purpose. The joiner is a little bit harder to grasp because if you don't have an understanding of the concept at least. So I first explain you my use case. We were working with those person data. So what we see here is we have an ID, okay, we have the names, we have an email address, and what I didn't explain to you until now is I have a so-called position of interest, and it's just a number. And some people have a position of interest, so they are interested in some job, and obviously this is some kind of identifier, an ID, and some people don't. Okay, this is important to have in mind. Then I have a table of job postings here. Let's check that out. So the job postings, they just have a title. They have an ID, which is the job underscore ID. They have a department and information whether the job is vacant or not. And they belong to some company. Okay, and we have 72 jobs, and all the jobs have an ID, but maybe some IDs are missing because the highest ID is 100 and the lowest is 1. So also there might be something, in the 30s and 40s, there are IDs missing, of course, also on purpose. And now I want to bring those information together. I want to take my persons and I want to see if there are corresponding matching job postings. Okay, and what the joiner does is it combines data based on a common key or ID. So the concatenate, it also combines data, but here we have similar table structures, and the concatenate just puts the data, it puts it below each other. The joiner works differently. It adds columns. So I want to take all those columns and all those table columns and bring them in one table. And yeah, let's see what comes out. So what the joiner needs first is the so-called matching criterion. And we have one left table and one right table. The left table here is the upper part, the first input port, and the right table is the second input port, the lower table. Okay. So we can join over many columns, but for this example, I just used the position of interest in the first table, and I use the job ID in the second table. I also got special options, for example, to use a so-called string representation for joining, but because we have numbers here and there, this is not necessary. And the next thing I am asked is how do I want to join? And I present you first the full outer join. So everything is included in my output, the matching rows, then the unmatched rows of my person table, and the unmatched rows of my job table. So now we expect a huge table. And yeah, second tab is also important. The second tab here just shows I include everything, and I do this for the first table and for the second table. So I hit OK now. I run it. And now when I go into the join result, then I can see here is the information from my first table with no match. Here is one case from my first table where I have a corresponding job, and I can see the job ID. I will move this next to the ID. This here is the most important information. Right, this can't be. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. This here is the joining thing. The ID is just a person identifier. Yeah, it's about those numbers. And when you see here the 1 matches the 1, then we got to join. The 5 matches the 5, we got to join, and the 8 matches the 8, and so on. And here in the bottom, we have some positions of interest of people, but no corresponding job. And this is the different case. What we see here is we have people with no position of interest, of course, then no job ID. Then we have matches, and sometimes we have jobs without somebody interested in it. And here we have interest in jobs without the job in the database. So here I can ask the question, maybe something has gone missing, or maybe the job advertisement is no longer online, something like this. So it's basically, I could erase those cases. What you see now is the full outer join. It is a little bit complicated to look at this like it is. What you can do is you can use the sorting, for example, by sorting descending on the position of interest. And here we can see these are all the people who are interested in a job. Here were the cases where the job data is missing, and here are people not interested in any job. And here we can see, because of this, there is no matching part. And when I now scroll down the table, then I can see, okay, we have now only jobs without somebody interested in it. Okay. The full outer join is something you can start with when you want to get information on a data set. Normally, what I do is I've defined one table as my main table, and the other one is some kind of a helper table or so. And in this case, I'm only interested in the people I want to keep all the people, also the ones with no interest in some job. And so I use the so-called left outer join. I present that to you, run that, and go in the output. And this looks like that. It's pretty easy to see. These are the people who have a match in the other table. And also here sorting is good. Here we can see, here we have no matches. And as I told, these cases have no corresponding jobs. Okay, so this is the joiner. One option, which is also very nice, is that you have the possibility to split your join result into multiple tables. So then the top is the matching rows, the middle is the left unmatched rows, and the bottom is the right unmatched rows. To present this to you, I activate everything, do the full outer join. Let's go for it. And here we see now I can open the join result. And I got the full table with information. And then I have the left unmatched rows. And these are like the persons who have no interest or who have some position of interest, but no correspondence in the other table. And on the right side, these are the jobs nobody is interested in. And also interesting is that you keep only the columns from the table that you used. So when we look at this, we have those 5 columns. And when I go here in the bottom output, then it's only those 5 columns. So not all the other columns with red question marks. Yeah, I think this is what you need to know about the joiner. The idea of joining data comes from databases. You might get interested in how SQL is working with the joins. I think this is where the naming comes from. And it is really powerful because with this you really can customize how you want to merge certain tables together and get a nice, interesting data set out of that can help you in your analytics. I will now play it back to the left outer join, and I stop the splitting of the join result. And I could now also filter some columns, for example, take the job ID out or something like this, but I just leave it like it is. Okay, so now we have the joint data set here. And let's check it out again for the next step. Oh yeah, the next one is the group by. Let's see what we can do with this. So this is my result. And I could use that to, for example, talk to those persons and say something HR related to them. Don't know yet. Maybe talk to them and check their applications. Okay, now let's check out the group by. The group by is for grouping data and doing aggregations. And I think this job posting data set is really good to explain you what this means and how it works. So what we have here, I told it to you, certain job titles with IDs and different departments. Let's get an information on that. I sort by department. We can see those reoccur. We have, of course, the information is vacant, yes or no. And we have different companies, and also here we have not only unique values. Some are unique, but we have also some which are not unique. And when I click show possible values, I do a right click on the company column header, and then I can get a view over everything. So when you want to get information on your data, you can do something like that. Or you can click into the specification, and there you can get an overview of all the columns. used data types and also of the occurring values. When you go from left to right, then you can read that information here, and of course also copy and paste it. Okay. Now, what is a group? A group is either one criteria or a combination of multiple criteria and all the subsets of this combination, which falls into one cluster. Pretty hard to explain, pretty easy to show. So I go hands-on into it. I click the group by, and also here I have two tabs which are relevant for me. The first one is the group tab, and the second one is the manual aggregation tab. In the group tab, let's keep it really easy. We have a Boolean value is vacant, which can be true or false. So I say I want to group by this, and I just want to count, okay? And so I can take an arbitrary column. Normally I take the ID, and then I have to define an aggregation. I do it, and then we see what happens. Best for explaining. So I just count the job IDs. And here I am asked how to name the columns, and the new name will be count, and then parentheses, and then the column name. Okay, let's find out what it does. And it looks like this. Now we have reduced information. We see is vacant, false, true, 35 to 37. Okay. Now I want to enrich it. I want to know what companies have vacant jobs. And so I just put in the company in the grouping column. So now we get one row per company and one row per is vacant status. I run it, go into the group table, and now we can see when I sort it alphabetically, then we can see that the build right corp has one non-vacant position and two which are vacant, and so on. And I think the company with the most vacant positions is Innovate Tech Incorporated. Okay. And so on. So for example, now I can go and say I want a department also inside that. Let's do that and check out what happens now. And now you see we get a pretty huge table, but still we see we have one company with the same department with two different, they have a huge design department, 6 positions placed, and for example, two positions vacant. This is something you can do with the group by. You can really, really do much with it. Now I did some counting with the group by. I do some other with it now. First, I will fix that and take the department out to make it looking a little bit nicer for later. And let's call it counting. And what I want to do here is some kind of string aggregation. Now I want to, for example, take the company and list all the departments inside this company. I can do this by using the group by, just taking the company. And in the manual aggregation part, there are also non-numeric methods. I can now say I want the department and I want to concatenate the departments and I want to unique concatenate it. And I can also enter a delimiter and I use a special sign, a so-called escape character and an N, which is a new line. And with this, I get an interesting output, hopefully. Yeah, okay, it works. For example, this one here has, let's do it like that. Not too much variation inside, but yeah, there is one company and this company has, for example, 5 different departments in my data set. Okay. By the way, all this content is ChatGPT generated. So I find it interesting that it really looks like that the department has something in common with the company name. Yeah, this is something you can do. And if you don't want to use a delimiter like that, you can just say you want to use the comma and a space, run it. And what comes out then is you have a long list of it. What you can also do is you can use the group by with no aggregation. Yeah, I copy it. So this is the string concatenation. And this here is no aggregation. I take that, put it here, and no aggregation means I just take everything out here. You have an empty list, and I can say I want just department and company together. I hit OK, run it, and check out the output. And here we can see this is now reduced information. Yeah, so from 72 columns, we went to 28. And what is only here is the unique, combination of those groups. Yeah. Like the joiner, group by is based on SQL logic. And like the joiner, for me, it was in the beginning hard to grasp, but you can do much interesting things with it. It's really helpful. It helps you get a better insight into your data, and yeah, it gets the job done. So this is why I really have to say the group by is an important node. I want to do one more thing to show you, and I go inside here, and this is the removal of duplicates. Okay, removing duplicates, we have one which I know, and I show you that one. When I sort the IDs, it came to, yeah, we have that ID number 13, Franklin Pummel, 2 times. And there are parts of the information which are non-unique, so the difference between the tables and also the different positions of interest, but other data is a duplicate. And so I want to only keep this here and get rid of the second entry. And I show you how to do that. So I go into the group by and I add everything. So this person now with all attributes is a group. What I remove is the ID, because I know, oh no, the ID is okay, but the position of interest I said, and the origin column. This was what was not a duplicate. And what I do now is into the manual aggregation, I add everything, and I add in first, and I say, do it again. And I say first. Okay, go for it. I think there's one question. Check that out. Would you please explain a real use case which can be found in the most in HR departments? Okay. The use case which I have in HR departments the most is bring data together. So I have various systems, and all those systems have some kind of output format. That output format can be an Excel spreadsheet. That output can be an API. That output could also be some kind of database. And Knime helps me to bring that data together. And in order to do so, I have to do some steps like that. So bring same things together, filter something out which I don't want, clean my data before I merge it, rename it to have a better possibility to merge it, and of course join the data to make one larger file out of it. I hope this helps. So from my perspective, this should cover it. but we can also speak later over different use cases. So now the removal of the duplicates. Let's check out what came out of this. And yeah, here we are. Didn't work. Okay, it's also the city which has some uniqueness inside. So I take the city out, edit. And what I also noticed is now I want to keep the original names. Okay, run it. Let's see, and now he's gone. Very nice. So now I only have the entry from the first table. The entry from the second table is gone. And also this is some kind of HR related use case that you may have contradicting informations and that you have to decide which information you want to keep. Another question at this point, which is more efficient, group or remove duplicates? I'm using a large data set and I'm trying to improve speed. This is maybe a question the Knime engineers are better in. There is a duplicate row filter. And I really have to say I'm using Knime since 2014. So this was the way, the old school way. The newer way might be the duplicate row filter. Here it is, same convenience, a little bit more even. You can say, okay, you want now get the city out, the position of interest out, and the origin, and it does the same. I think with large data sets, do it one time, let them run against each other, and then you have the answer for yourself. Knime has also time measuring options so that you really can check out the performance of some nodes, but this dives too deep into something which won't interest the most of the attendants. Okay. I think the group by node is covered. As you can see, it has multiple use cases which you can do. And now I want to show you the string manipulation. This is also something which I really use often. In our data, we have, let's keep on going here. We have the first name and the last name of the persons. And what I can do here is now enter the so-called join. And I can now say join first name, last name. And I call this full name. So I got here a little expression which I can write. All the expressions which are available, I find them here. And in my expression, this happens. So I say I want to add the first name and the last name together. Let's see what comes out. Comes out a new column with the full name of the persons out of this information. And this is just for short. The syntax that you use here is straightforward, but you have to dive into it. I'm just showing you that it exists, as well as I just show you that so-called rule engines exist. So what I can do here is I want to recode, for example, the gender. To do that, I first have to know the information about the gender, male and female. So I keep that, copy it inside, and a rule looks like this. I say gender equals male. Have to put it in. Then we give them a 0, and double click on gender again, equals sign, female, arrow 1, and I call that gender coded. Go for it, run it. And what we have here now is the information about the gender in a 0 and 1 format. So also, in my opinion, the rule engine is really, really straightforward. And what is awesome about the rule engine, this is not the only rule-based node. So you can use, for example, a rule-based row splitter, where the syntax is exactly the same, but here in this case, you create columns, and here in this case, you filter your data set according to some rules you write. And to top it, there is another one, and this another one is the so-called column expressions. And you guessed it, you can even code more. And I think I will jump over this one, just dive into it right quick. So I can create an expression, and I can access all the columns, all the variables in my data set, and all the functions which Knime offers. And this really enables me to do very, very complex calculations in one single node. And not only that, I can do multiple complex calculations in the same node. And every calculation I create leads to a new column output in the end, or an edited column here in before. All right, I have one last thing to say. I want to show you 2 advanced concepts. The first advanced concept is a so-called meta node. In a meta node, you can couple logic. So you have multiple nodes wrapped inside one node. What this one is doing here is it downloads one image from the internet. And this here is a component. It's the same, you can couple logic inside, but this logic is a little bit more complex. It enables me to decide how many images I want to download. I put it to 3, I let it run, and I go to the output. Now I see I have 3 images, and when I hit here on, for example, 7, let it run, and go to the output, then I have 7 images. And this is an advanced concept. For what we have here is configurations, and that lets you set the count. And in the end, you have some widget nodes, and this lets you create, for example, a website or a table, which is then available in a user interface, a so-called interactive view. Okay, with those basic building blocks which I showed you, you might end up in some advanced stuff in the end. This is in reality what I started with, and if I had this information, check those nodes out and find out how they work, then I would really, really have saved lots of time. I hope this helps you flatten the learning curve, but of course, yeah, maybe you have now questions. I think it was fast, it was much, but yeah, maybe the one or other thing is new to you. Maybe everything is new to you. I hope you were greatly entertained. And now I think I hand over to Schalk and we wrap that session up.
Thank you very much, Julian. I think we still have time for 1 or 2 questions. And I quickly want to circle back to the one that you started answering, and then you said you wanted to continue with that. And that was the one on just a little bit taking what you did now, because obviously for privacy reasons, you generated your data with ChatGPT. But I think a lot of the people are wondering, what are the typical use cases where there's a lot of data produced, where workflows like this really kind of, have the highest impact? If you maybe can speak a little bit about those.
So you mean which kind of workflows I do in my job?
Or let me rephrase. So this is a job posting one. So it seems like that makes a lot of sense. You get a lot of data from your job posting. You need to match it. What other type of situations do make sense to create workflows in?
in my job, it is mostly about reporting and analytics. So like I said, multiple data sources. And what I do is inform the management about something. I can't go too much into the detail, but mostly it's about personal development and also sometimes diversity reporting. And for this, you have to gather various data sources, bring them together, and then start, for example, grouping them. And Gloria in the chat also asked, can you create or do you also create dashboards with Knime? Here I have to say, no, I don't do it directly in Knime. On the one hand, I used to use Tableau in the past. I have experience with Power BI. And, oh yeah, very good. Yeah, so Tableau and Power BI, I know with Knime it is possible. What I instead do with Knime is use the Knime server and create some kind of interactive web applications that I think are even more interesting than a dashboard because it's highly interactive and it also enables a single HR user to really have a complex workflow with a few clicks going. So all this complexity is hidden behind some kind of nice web form, like you see it here. I think this is the way to go. So you see just a few pictures, not so hard. But when you dive inside it, then you can see what logic is necessary. So you download it. You have to make binary data into a PNG, you have to do some renaming and present it. And yeah, so not so much dashboards, more like handling the data and doing calculations on it.
Yes, and I think that's a good point, Julian. You can, if you want to, you can use Knime to create dashboards. There are possibilities, but a lot of companies do have BI tools, and you can export your data to that. Speaking of exporting and importing data, I have two more follow-up questions quickly. You've spoken about different data sources that you use. You showed us here Excel files. Do you also connect sometimes to databases directly? Can you do it in Knime? How do you handle those type of situations?
I'm not so much experienced in the database nodes, I really have to admit, because what I use for my job is APIs. And direct database connections are something they do in the IT department, but me as an HR person has not access to these kind of data sources. So what we have is reporting interfaces, which might create CSV data, Excel data, or in the newer systems, like I said, APIs, which you then can connect to with a so-called GET request, for example. Also a bit advanced stuff, but not too hard. When you have an API key and an URL and you do know what you can do, or you know what you do, then you can get all the data you want with a simple GET request, or if needed, POST request. So Knime speaks the language of the internet, and this is something I also really appreciate. I'm not bound to Excel. I can get in various file formats. I can get out various file formats, and it's really convenient.
Yeah, and I think just to put that even in simpler language, APIs, if you have some other platform you're working on, HR, maybe they have a connection point and you can get your data correctly from that. And it helps a lot with that. I think do we have we have 1 minute left. Let's wrap it up there. Any unanswered questions? I know we had one, I think, from Christopher that we'll answer in the forum. Julian, you shared with us some email address. Can you maybe bring that up on the screen again? If you want to contact Julian directly with more questions after this session, please do so. We will also post his details on the forum thread. You can also just pop him a message there. Everything that was presented today will also be shared there, so you can go review it. The video is going to be on YouTube. And we want to thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for the questions. Thank you, Julian, for sharing. And on that note, I hope everyone has a good day or a good evening, depending where you are. Cheers from our side.
One last word from my side. I rushed over the best practices. I put them in the presentation, but I talked about some. Just read it when you get the presentation. When you decide you want to work with Knime, then take your time to configure it, dive into the advanced concepts. And yeah, I think this is my last work. Thank you for attending.
Thanks, Julian. And
have a good day.
Best practice is always good. Thank you very much and have a good day. Ciao.